Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Reign of Troy Radio, episode 464. Coming to you on Wednesday, November 23rd. It is Thanksgiving Eve, and we are here to preview USC and Notre Dame locking horns at the Coliseum, 4:30 p.m. on ABC. As always, we're going to preview the game, look over our over-under picks, and so much more. You can follow us on social media. We're at Reign of Troy on Twitter and Facebook. You can subscribe the show on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. We are there. Our email address, reignoftroy@fanside.com. I'm your host, Michael Castillo, and you can follow me on Twitter at MichaelCastFS for now, I guess. And I'm joined along with my wonderful co-host, Penguin of Troy on Twitter, Alicia Deratola.
Hello, everybody.
Hello. At some point, we got to start putting our Mastodon in there, maybe? What do you think?
I hope not. I really don't want to learn Mastodon. I've opened up that site and I'm comfortable with where I'm at Twitter. I don't want to have to learn a new social media platform. It was hard enough getting me over onto TikTok, and now I feel comfortable on TikTok, but I'm firmly a lurker, and if I had to find a new social media platform to not be a lurker on, please don't.
Yeah. Anyways, we're gonna go take Twitter down with the ship, but we hope you guys can follow us there along with everywhere else we're at, including YouTube, where we're live right now. A big shout out to everyone who is joining us live on this Wednesday. Of course, it is the day before Thanksgiving, so we appreciate everyone for joining us along. If you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts, maybe this will be a little bit of a chat as you go to grandma's house or your parents' house or your cousin's house or whoever's house. It'll be a good time for you on Thursday. We hope. We are currently on the road, as we've mentioned before this week, up in Washington with family and friends, and we hope that all the Rotbots, have a great Thanksgiving as well. Of course, the big one, though, is USC and Notre Dame coming up on Saturday night. We'll talk about that one in a little bit, but we got to start with the news. Alicia, the college football playoff rankings came out on Tuesday. They come out every Tuesday night. The Trojans, number 5 in the AP poll, number 5 in the coaches poll. You could have assumed they'd be number 5 in the college football playoff rankings. They are not. The Trojans rank number 6 behind the LSU Tigers, of whom the Tigers have 2 losses. What's the deal?
The committee said that they value LSU's wins over Ole Miss and Alabama, over the wins that USC currently has, and over the losses that LSU currently has. I think that there's a lot of uproar about the whole being ranked behind LSU thing. And I think a lot of it has to do from the committee perspective. A lot of it has to do that USC still hasn't played 2 of its tougher games of the season. When we talk about USC being a playoff-worthy team, if they're undefeated at the end of the season, it's essential that USC has the 2 wins that they have coming up to bolster their resume. Not having those yet means that USC's resume is incomplete, where LSU might have 2 losses, but their wins at this point, the committee judges them as stronger. Now, is the committee correct? I can certainly make an argument against the value of an Ole Miss win for a team that is now ranked 20th, and I don't think we can assume we'll get out of Dodge this week without adding a 4th loss to their resume. And I think we can have a discussion about whether or not Alabama is being overranked and overvalued as a win for a team like LSU, given that they have 2 losses, including one really, really bad loss on the season. So there's all sorts of debates that you could have about the thing. To me, one thing stands: win and you're in. If USC is undefeated at the end of the season, I do not think that the College Football Playoff Committee will leave them out. And here's why. There's a lot of back and forth about, does USC being behind LSU at this point mean that if LSU beats Georgia, that will mean that LSU will get in, Georgia will get in, and USC will get left out. I straight up do not believe that to be the case. And here's why. There have been 8 playoffs so far, with 15 Power 5 champions. left out of the playoff. Only twice, 2 years, were Power 5 champs with just one loss left out of the playoff. In 2014, Baylor and TCU were co-champions of the Big 12. Both were 11-1. Alabama, Oregon, FSU, and Ohio State were all conference champions. They all had 12 wins, and they all had no one had more than one loss. They got in instead. So the one-loss Big 12 champ didn't get in because of what the other Power 5 champs had done. That is essentially, puts the Big 12 on the path to create a Big 12 title game because they needed that extra win. In 2018, Ohio State is 12-1 and a Big 10 champ. They get left out in favor of a 12-1 Oklahoma Big 12 champ in a season where undefeated Notre Dame basically changed the dynamics of whether or not a conference championship was the end all be all. Because if Notre Dame is undefeated, then 2 Power 5 conference champions are going to get left out each year instead of 1. So Ohio State only gets left out because the committee preferred 12-1 Oklahoma as the Big 12 champ. So they were debating between a Big 10 champ and a Big 12 champ. And I might also add that Oklahoma team is a really good case study for USC. Because one of the big reasons that the committee right now has USC at number 6 instead of number 5 is because the committee is concerned about USC's defense. They want to see more from USC's defense. Well, the 2018 Oklahoma team that got into the playoff over 12-1 Ohio State was almost mirroring this team in terms of incredible offense and real bad defense. In fact, that Oklahoma team gave up 33.3 points per game that season. Like USC's defense is better than that defense was. They allowed 40 plus points to Texas, Texas Tech, Oklahoma State, Kansas, West Virginia. But they beat 3 ranked teams in a row to end their season, and that's what got them in. Does that sound familiar to you, Michael? USC has the opportunity to beat 3 ranked teams to get in. By the way, 2018 Oklahoma was ranked number 6 at this point in the season. So, again, the mirror there. What about one-loss non-champions who have potentially been considered for the playoff? Essentially, they never get in if Power 5 champions are available with similar records. In 2015, Iowa was left out because they lost to Michigan State in the Big 10 title game by 3 points. Instead, they put in 11-1 Big 12 champ Oklahoma. Oklahoma was ranked number 7 on November 21st. They finished the season with a win over Oklahoma State and got in over an Iowa team that had 1 loss by 3 points in their conference championship game and could have been in if they wanted to have a Big 10 double whammy in there. They didn't. Another one that could have had a situation where they left out an Oklahoma team that was 11-1 in 2015, or another team that could have had a 1-loss non-champion get in was Ohio State that same year, 2015. They didn't get to play in the Big 10 title game because they'd lost to Michigan State the week before, and that was also a 3-point loss. But 1-loss Ohio State that didn't have a Big 10 title to their name didn't get in over any of the other 4 conference champions. So when we look at the history of the committee, Power 5 champions get in unless another Power 5 1-loss or less team takes their place. 1-loss non-champions don't tend to get in. So if we're talking about does USC get in over Georgia? Well, Georgia is a unique case because Georgia is the only team in college football playoff history to get into the playoff after losing their conference title game appearance. That was last year. But last year was also a perfect storm. Georgia loses to Alabama in the SEC title game and has 1 loss. But the Big 12, Pac-12, and ACC champions, they all had 2+ losses. If Oklahoma State, who was number 5 going into the Big 12 title game, hadn't lost to Baylor in that game, I don't think they would have been left out in favor of Georgia. What I really think would have happened is Oklahoma State would have ranked ahead of Georgia, who would have kicked Cincinnati out of the playoff. But Cincinnati would have only been involved in that whole thing because the Pac-12 and the ACC didn't have a 1-loss or less champion to keep Georgia out of that in that scenario. The only other time that a team from the same conference has made it in, i.e. 1 conference champion and 1 non-conference champion, was in 2017. That's when 11-1 Alabama got in, but they only had to beat out 2 loss conference champions Ohio State and USC. So they didn't get to play in the SEC title game. But if the Big Ten or the Pac-12 had produced a 1-loss conference champion, I think it's pretty clear based on the activity of the committee this entire time that Alabama would have been left out in favor of a 1-loss Ohio State or a 1-loss USC. They didn't have 1 loss, so that's why Alabama got in. Here's the other element, the final element that I think is the factor here. If you're thinking about this very specific hypothetical, where an unlikely hypothetical, by the way, where LSU beats Georgia, and then it's a debate between 2-loss LSU that is an SEC champion or 1-loss Georgia that is not an SEC champion. I don't think Georgia gets in over USC on resume either. Georgia's reputation right now is better than their resume, and that is a deserved reputation. I'm not dogging Georgia. But Georgia only has 2 ranked wins on their slate right now. They beat Tennessee and they beat Oregon. Impressive wins. But if we get to the end of the season and both of those teams are 1 loss, Georgia and USC, Georgia will still only have ranked wins over Tennessee and Oregon. And Tennessee is probably going to continue to fall because of losses that they sustained even before Hendon Hooker got injured. USC, on the other hand, would have a win over Notre Dame, a win over UCLA, a win over Utah, 3 teams that we assume are going to stay ranked this season. And they will have either a win over...
Well, a win over Utah or Oregon, presumably, in the Pac-12 championship game.
Well, so here's the thing is they will either have another ranked win over Oregon State, an Oregon State team that beats Oregon, or they will have a win over Oregon, assuming that Oregon knocks Oregon State out of the top 25, but then faces USC in the Pac-12 title game. So USC would have twice as many ranked wins as Georgia, with a common opponent that USC would also have beaten, and their losses would have been to an LSU team and a Utah team that, by that measure, wouldn't be terribly difficult to separate. The difference maker in that debate would be conference title. USC would have a conference title and Georgia would not. Do I think that the committee is always very predictable? They aren't. Certainly not when they're ranking in week 13 and 14. But when it comes to week 15 ranks, which are the rank that puts the playoff in place, they are extremely predictable. They follow a very predictable pattern. They favor conference champions and they favor teams that have 1 loss or fewer. USC would check those boxes. They're not getting left out. I know that people don't always agree with me. I know that people are mistrustful of the SEC trying to get to SEC teams of the committee trying to get to SEC teams in. I get it. The system is rigged. There's SEC bias everywhere. All of that kind of stuff. I'm sympathetic to that. But the fact remains, if you follow the season out through to the end, USC at 12-1 will not be left out of the top 4. The more research I've done, the more firm I am about that. The important thing is getting to 12-1, which, by the way, the odds of USC being 12-1 and LSU beating Georgia are astronomically small. So, we don't need to spend any more time on this hypothetical. But also, USC controls their own destiny, and no one will convince me of that otherwise. Where did I go wrong there, Michael?
I don't think you went anywhere wrong. I think that the thing that people need to remember about the college football playoff rankings, the ones that come out on Tuesday nights, it is a test situation for them. It's an experiment. What do you call it? Examination. What's the word? Whatever.
It's a practice runs.
Yes, it's a practice run with the idea of if the season ended today. They don't look at anything in the future. They look at just the season as it's gone. And just the season as it's gone doesn't favor SC right now because SC still has 2 of its biggest wins still to go. As it stands now, SC is going to play 2 top 15 teams. Whether it's Notre Dame and Utah or Notre Dame and Oregon, whoever it is, Notre Dame and Washington on a fluky situation, all those teams are in the top 15. SC is going to have the wins there because right now the committee talks about there were quotes talking about the wins from LSU were impressive to the committee. That's fine. LSU has beaten Alabama and beaten Ole Miss, and you look at USC's ranked wins. SC has wins over UCLA and Oregon State. As it stands right now, okay, the committee favoring wins over Alabama and Ole Miss over UCLA and Oregon State. Who cares? That's not the end story when it all comes down to a week and a half from now, right? That's not what the end story is going to be. So take a deep breath. We'll see how things come to be. Um, the committee valuing wins is a good thing for SC, who has a schedule that's so backloaded that will allow them to finish the season with a string of ranked wins. I think you talk about the Georgia situation. Yeah, I think eye test alone, there's probably going to be a lot of people who would put one-loss Georgia in over USC. But you talked about the history and all that stuff. Doesn't necessarily favor the SEC loser, with the exception of last year in a weird scenario where it played out that would sort of make sense there. But just take a deep breath, everybody. Take a deep breath. I don't think it's a big deal. I know that it's uncomfortable now to look at USC at number 6, but like you said, the history is on SC's side here. I understand the skepticism about the SEC stuff, but if the committee was truly hell-bent on supporting the SEC, they'd be finagling away for Tennessee wouldn't be ranked behind Oregon and Clemson right now. You know what I mean?
Texas A&M would have been in the playoff in 2020, by the way, if that was the case. But also, the Georgia thing, just one last thing to add. The eye test impervious Georgia that we all see isn't losing to LSU.
Exactly.
So if they lose,
nobody thinks that LSU's winning that game.
Yeah. So if they lost to LSU though, then their imperviousness would no longer be the eye test that we've all seen because they lost to LSU. Yeah. So
exactly. So anyways, let's talk about Saturday.
SC, more actual pressing things that USC actually has control over. And also, by the way, you can't be a playoff contender if you lose this game coming up. So
yeah, exactly. Saturday night, 4:30 p.m. Pacific on ABC. This is the big one. We talked about last week being the big one. Well, this one even bigger, given the stakes that USC has. Certainly not a high-stakes game in terms of the conference. It's not a conference game. But if USC wants to get to the playoff, you've got to go through your arch rival Notre Dame to do it. And this is the dream scenario for SC, I think. You get your both rivals, UCLA and Notre Dame, in back-to-back weeks at the end of the season in prime time, with your Heisman candidate quarterback having the opportunity to be on the center stage. And one week have Gus Johnson call his game, and the next week you've got the top ABC crew, Kirk Herbstreit and the whole bit there. This is the dream scenario for the Trojans going forward, is to be on center stage and have yourself a chance to win those style points. Notre Dame, of course, a very interesting team. I've talked to you, Alicia, about
that's one way to put it.
That I don't know that there's a Notre Dame team I feel less confident in knowing anything about than this one. I feel more confident in knowing the 2009 Notre Dame team that was real bad, 2007 Notre Dame team that was real bad. This one is such a interesting Notre Dame team in that they fell out of favor super early on in the season with the loss to Marshall. They got beat by a really bad Stanford team. But since then, they've been one of the hottest teams in America. Absolutely drubbed Clemson. They've been a wrecking ball the last month or so, taking care of business, scoring 40, 45 points almost a game the last few games. Everything's kind of coming to fruition for them. But you look at the metrics, this is just a good Notre Dame team. It's a very good Notre Dame team that I think is well coached in a first year by Martin Freeman. 8-3 so far through 11 games. He's a first-year coach who I think has shown tendencies to be a first-year coach, and someone who is continuing to learn and learn and learn. There's a lot to like about this Notre Dame team. But do they compare to UCLA last week? I don't think so. I don't think there's anyone on this Notre Dame team that's going to keep you up at night like the DTRs and the Zach Charbonnets, the Bruins. The Irish ranked 38th in SP plus, 32nd on defense, 64th on offense, 23rd on special teams. They're just about good at everything, great at just about nothing, terrible at just about nothing. You look at the rankings, and so many of the teams we've talked about this year have been 120 something in this, 130 something in that, top 5 in this and top 5 in this. UCLA, a prime example, right? Like there were defensive metrics that were really bad, offensive metrics that were really good. This Notre Dame team is just about decent in literally everything. And in college football, if you are decent at everything, you're going to be a pretty good football team and win a lot of games. And when you're a hot team that is excelling on special teams, 23rd in SP plus special teams, including seven blocked kicks this year, you're going to win your games. You're going to win a lot of your close games, and you're going to be able to put together a run later on in the season. But in saying that, I think that this is absolutely a team that SC needs to be worried of. Defensively, they have held teams in check, but at the same time, Drake May of North Carolina threw for 5 touchdowns against the Irish. Stanford beat Notre Dame. There's such a conundrum to me. The most comparable team that we could come up with was Oregon State.
Yeah.
And I think that part of what made Oregon State such a scary matchup for SC in week 3 was that it was on the road in Corvallis in a hostile location. And we knew that they were a team that could play, a type of tempo and throw little wrinkles at you offensively and everything. And that turned out to be a defensive dogfight that I don't think we expected. This could be that defensive dogfight, but I don't know that Notre Dame has the offensive firepower to keep up with the Trojans. Drew Pine, good. I don't think he's a top 5 quarterback on USC's schedule compared to your Cam Risings, your Jaden Delaras, your DTRs. He's a little bit of a step back. He just is.
You're being generous to call Drew Pine good. And I know those are famous last words, but he is the definition of medium. He is the definition of.
Is that what people are saying in your alum circle, your alum chat?
What people are saying in my not alum chats is that he's the least talented quarterback that USC has faced this season. So that's from Notre Dame fans. Yeah, the situation with Notre Dame is weird. They are one of the better defenses that USC will have faced. But I don't know that they're the best defense. I still think that Washington State is sort of more up there in terms of better defenses that USC has faced. Their offense is starting to find itself. They have a target that in Michael Mayer that genuinely could pull a Dalton Kincaid. And I saw a quote from Alex Grinch this afternoon about how, what's the game plan for stopping Mayer the way that they couldn't stop Kincaid. And his thing was just like, maybe tackle him when he gets the ball. So it really could be that simple. That would really help. Easier said than done for a lot of these guys, but that's the thing that USC is going to have to focus on. But I think that the difficulty here with this Notre Dame team, like you've sort of laid out, is they're good, not great. They're capable, but not exceptional. And you have to wonder, what does it take to stop a USC offense of this caliber? Because let's go in and be honest about USC's defense. The turnovers that they scored, that they forced against UCLA were the difference in the game. But even with those turnovers, they allowed 45 points. So, maybe Drew Pine, I think if you're a Notre Dame fan, you have to look at Drew Pine and think, can he replicate what Jack Plummer did to USC? In that Jack Plummer is not an exceptional quarterback from Cal, but he was able to throw against this USC defense and make it interesting. Can Drew Pine replicate that performance? And I think he could if Jack Plummer could do it against this defense. Certainly. So let's say that you expect USC's defense to give. Let's say USC, you expect USC's defense to let Notre Dame's offense sort of operate at their peak. Well, their peak on offense isn't that good. It's not Caleb Williams level good. It's not 45-40 shootouts level good. So it comes down to, can this Notre Dame defense stop Caleb Williams and company? And that's the question, because yes, they are one of the better defenses USC has played, but they're not the best. Like I said, SP Plus has Washington State number 12 in defense, Oregon State number 20, Utah number 28. Notre Dame checks in at number 32. What did USC do to Washington State, Oregon State, and Utah? They certainly blew up on Utah. They certainly scored enough points against Washington State. Oregon State is the one outlier there, and that was, to me, the impact of Caleb Williams going on the road in a hostile environment for the first time in a USC uniform. And playing, frankly, in an unrecognizable fashion in that game. But you also look at, FPI has Washington State, Utah, and Oregon State ranked ahead of Notre Dame defensively. Scoring defense, Washington State and Utah are ahead of Notre Dame in that metric. Total defense, Notre Dame is the best defense that USC has faced, but Utah and Oregon State aren't too far behind in terms of total defense. Rushing defense, yeah, Notre Dame has a good rush defense, but it's not better than UCLA's or Washington State's or Utah's, and USC ran the ball on all three of those teams. Their pass defense is by far the best pass defense that USC has faced. They're 16th. Fresno State was 35th. Utah 50th. Oregon State 60th. Part of me wonders, though, like, if you are a Pac-12 defense, even a good one, I feel like your pass defense is never going to rank well nationally because of the quarterbacks that you play in this league.
Right.
Notre Dame has not played a quarterback of Caleb Williams' caliber this entire season.
Hold on. Well, they played Drake May. And
they played Drake May, and they played CJ Stroud. Now,
yes,
CJ Stroud in that first game was, anyone who watched that first game could tell you, Ohio State didn't know what the hell their offense was yet. Ohio State's offense in the first 3 weeks of the season was a big old, what's going on with their receivers and the injuries, what's going on with Stroud, what's going on with the run game, Ohio State needed to find their footing. CJ Stroud needed to find his footing. Drake May is the closest thing to Caleb Williams that Notre Dame has faced this year, and Drake May put up 5 touchdowns and 300 yards on this Notre Dame pass defense. So do I think that Caleb Williams could replicate what Drake May did to this Notre Dame team? You have to assume so, because I think Caleb Williams is head and shoulders above Drake May, and that's knowing how good Drake May is. That's a reflection of how good Caleb Williams is. The interesting thing I think to point out about Notre Dame's defense is what they do with the red zone. Because I think if you look at the stats, they're all either strong or worst, like middling. They're, where they're weak, they're like still top 50, except for red zone conversions, where they're 125th, basically, and touchdown conversions, they're 128th. If you get into the red zone against the Notre Dame team, you're generally scoring touchdowns.
Yeah.
But they also don't let you into the red zone very often. So that's maybe a question to have.
Yeah, I think that's going to be an interesting part for me. I think that you mentioned the other defenses SC has played. Oregon State, Washington State. Certainly, we've talked about it before. Oregon State probably, we all agree, is a top 25 team. Washington State, a top 40 team who has sort of gotten unlucky with the number of good teams that they've had to play. All their losses have been to good teams.
Yeah.
Well, okay, go back and look at those two games. Offensively, they were USC's worst offensive games of the year. The only two games in which SC did not have over 400 yards. And there's only two games that SC did not have over 400 yards: Oregon State and Washington State. The Oregon State game, SC pulls out of their ass with the Nealon nudge. We know how that went, but it was a game in which the defense stood on their head, created 4 turnovers, turned that game around for the Trojans on the road in Corvallis. But it was 2 months ago.
Yeah.
This team is so different than they were 2 months ago. And we've talked about it before that defensively, SC in the first 6 games were significantly better than they have been since the Eric Gentry injury. And I think that certainly is concerning. And when you look at Notre Dame's offense and their production towards the second half of the season, they are much more potent now than they would have been back then if SC played them then. At the same point, the Washington State game, that was a game that Caleb Williams struggled in as well. Not nearly as bad as the Oregon State game, but those are the only 2 games that you can say Caleb Williams struggled in. He has been just boffo since then. SC's offense in yards per play has been over 8 in 3 of the last 5 games. SC has gained at least 515 yards in every game since that Washington State game. So, yes, I think that Notre Dame can probably keep SC in check more than Arizona and Cal and Colorado and UCLA. But this is the team that is performing on such a high level right now that I don't think that means they suddenly turn into the pumpkin that went up on the road to Corvallis and needed a miracle to get out of there with a win. I think SC right now is at a completely different level on offense. And if they continue to get more contribution from the depth of the receivers that they've had, I think that's only going to help. If Austin Jones can continue to be absolutely feeling it like he has in the last 6 quarters of football, that's certainly going to help. If SC can get some action from Mario Williams, we saw him against UCLA a little bit. He had the big drop there. He had one catch against the Bruins, but he hadn't played in a few games. If he can get back a little more healthy, that will help. If Eric Gentry can see the field a little bit more, that should only help. For me, the big test here is, can SC prepare and be ready at home with all the pressure on them in the world? Can they come through and play with that pressure off the win of UCLA to the point where they don't make a inferior team look to the level that Cal did?
Yeah.
And if they do that, if they pass that test, I don't see any problem here. I like SC to come out here with all the momentum from last week and really show who they are and make this a statement game for the Trojans. I'm not going to say that there's no chance in which they come out and have a letdown or any of those things. I would be stupid to say that that's not possible given SC's first quarter last week, the first quarter the week before against Colorado, how the Colorado fourth quarter went, and all those things. We still need to see 60 minutes out of SC, and I'm not going to say they're going to have a perfect 60 minutes on Saturday, but things are trending too well for SC right now not to have a big showing on Saturday. Is that naive?
No, I agree, and the truth is that if they do lay an egg, then they're not the team we thought they were.
Yeah.
And they're not ready for the playoff, and they're not ready for the Pac-12 title game, and they're not ready for the big time.
Yeah.
And I think you and I both agree that it's year one. I don't know that we expected them to be. But when you look at what we've seen from the individuals on this team, I want them to be. I want Caleb Williams to rise to that occasion. I believe he will.
Mm-hmm.
If he doesn't, then it's just because he wasn't ready for it. And you move on to what goes on, see if you can win the Pac-12 and go on. But when it comes down to it, USC should be able to withstand whatever Notre Dame throws at them. I don't think it's going to be a blowout. I think it's going to be a tight game. When it comes down to it, who are you putting the game on? Are you putting the game on Caleb Williams, or are you putting the game on Drew Pine? Because I know who I'm voting for there.
Right. It's going to be Caleb Williams. And Greg in the chat says ND cannot score enough points to beat SC, and to me, that's what it comes down to.
I think that's correct.
I look back at the Washington State game, and yes, SC struggled relatively on offense, 5.35 yards per play. Well, compare that to what they were doing against UCLA last week. But they still scored 30 points against Washington State. If they score 30 points on Saturday night, I'm going to be feeling pretty good about SC's chances.
Well, and that's the thing is even if this Notre Dame defense slows USC down the way that you pointed out Washington State and Oregon State and those did, you still need to be able to score more points. You're not going to stop this defense. You're going to slow them down. Or this offense, you're going to slow them down. You still need to score more points. When you look at what Notre Dame's offense has available to them, like Drew Pine is not the quarterback that has lit up this USC defense. And that is something that I think people are losing sight of when we talk about the USC defense. The USC defense, remember, the first 6 weeks, the USC defense was holding teams to 20 points and under.
Yeah.
They were getting the job done. They were adjusting in the second half. They were getting to the quarterback. They were sacking him. They were forcing turnovers. They were doing everything that you do against that caliber of quarterback. What happened in the last 5 weeks? The caliber of quarterback changed. Yeah. Cam Rising was up to the task. Jaden DeLora, we know his talent level is high. When his ceiling is there, he was up to the task. Jake Plummer rose to the task, I do that literally every time. Jack Plummer rose to the task.
Jack Plummer is the outlier.
Yes.
Jack Plummer is like we talked about before. If Drew Pine is going to be the guy to beat SC this week,
that's still only 35 points.
It's going to be because of what Jack Plummer did.
Yeah.
Right.
But that level of play, that's an outlier because JT Strout reverted back to what happens to quarterbacks against this USC defense when they get after them. And Dorian Thompson-Robinson put up 45 points on this USC defense, but also they forced him into 4 turnovers. They got the better of him, and DTR is one of the best quarterbacks the USC will have faced this year. Drew Pine doesn't fit the mold of the quarterbacks that give USC's defense trouble. He's not a super mobile quarterback. He doesn't always make great decisions. He doesn't have a great arm. He's not going to beat you straight up. So to me, it really does come down to, does USC rise to the occasion from a mentality perspective? Because if the defense, I wanted to point out the last thing somebody on Twitter pointed out, we were talking about the committee calling out USC's defense and saying they wanted to see more from USC's defense.
Yeah.
USC should have that pinned on every defensive player's locker this week, saying nobody believes in you. Nobody believes in you. You want to see the defense rise up and respond almost exactly the way they did against UCLA. Who cares if they're getting yards? Who cares if they're burning you here and there? You force the turnovers, you win the game, right? And on the offensive side of the ball, if you're Caleb Williams and you're a Heisman candidate, and you're Jordan Addison, you're Biletnikoff candidate, and you're Mario Williams, and you want to prove that you're not just second fiddle to everybody else, and you're Kyle Ford and Taj Washington and Austin Jones and Darwin Barlow and Raleek Brown and all of the talent that USC has played, I don't know how you stop this offense enough to make this interesting. Literally what Notre Dame needs is the one moment of the game that sort of flips the script and makes it chaos is a special teams play. And they could do that. They absolutely could. So maybe that's where the formula for Notre Dame getting an upset here. But if USC comes in with the right mindset, they will not get upset this week. If USC gets upset this week, I think it will be because they weren't ready for the occasion, not because they couldn't match up.
I completely agree. I completely agree with that. I think that this is going to be one of those moments where if SC is ready and if the Coliseum is what it should be, which is absolutely rocking on Saturday night, I don't want to see an empty seat there. Come on. Like I want it to absolutely be what it can be. And if that energy is there and if SC shows up, I think that, you know what I go back to, and I know that this is all anecdotal BS and whatnot, but 2004, SC beats Cal at home, the big Cal game, right? The loudest moment the Coliseum's ever been, all that stuff. The next week they play a ASU team, which I don't know. Maybe you can look this up, Alicia. I want to say ASU is ranked 15th. Next week, 2004.
2004.
2004. Look it up while I'm talking. The ASU team in 2004 comes into the Coliseum. SC, hot off the week against Cal, comes in and absolutely blows the doors off of them. I'm not going to say that this is going to be a blowout. I don't think SC can win a blowout with the defense that is imperfect.
Mm-hmm.
But I think SC is learning that being imperfect is not the end of the world when you have an offense as good as you have. And I go back to the conversation we had in the chat on Monday night that you just got to be accepting of what SC's defense is. They are opportunistic. They have a great havoc man in Tuli Tuipulotu. They have an excellent corner in Mekhi Blackman. They are flawed in almost every other area except for creating turnovers. And when they do those things, they get their stops. And that's how they work. They don't work in the way that is traditionally great. And that's why they're not going to be a defense you're going to talk about forever. And this probably isn't the team that's going to win a national championship. We all agree on those things. But when you look at when you pair them with the offense that SC has, the quarterback that SC has in Caleb Williams, this just feels so much like sort of the teams of the past where you could just rely on your playmakers to do the thing. And I know that SC fans got frustrated like in 2020, the year we don't talk about, when the playmakers came to be in the last minute. But this is just different because they're doing it repeatedly and winning the right way. So was I right? 15th?
19th.
19th. Okay. ASU was 19th in 2004. And yeah.
No, sorry. They were 15th because they had a bye week.
They were 15th.
Yes.
Yeah.
So they moved up during their bye.
Yeah. And yeah, in the chat, my chat screen is all wonky at the moment, but Dr. Carly Yu says, yeah, SC won that game 45-7 and it was 42-7.5. Yeah. I don't think that's going to be a complete repeat, but this team doing that same thing would be like a 17-point win because Drew Pine is going to get his in this game. The point is to limit him. And if SC just limits all of Notre Dame's opportunities, they win the game as long as they maximize theirs.
We need to discuss a few players on Notre Dame before we move on to over-under. So just because I think we've been sort of speaking generalities a little bit more with this team, in part because it's hard to discuss individuals on this team when this team is so meh and medium. But they have running backs in Audric Estime and Logan Diggs, who are, Estime has 11 touchdowns on the ground this year, 782 yards. Diggs has 698 yards, 2 touchdowns. They're sort of splitting carries. Chris Tyree is an interesting back. He's got 399 yards on the ground, 128 yards, and 2 touchdowns through the air. So he's out there making plays occasionally. Lorenzo Styles, Jaden Thomas, and Braden Lenzy at wide receiver. They can get going. So I think you will see those guys.
And Michael Mayer, like you mentioned, at tight end,
and Michael Mayer is the danger man on offense. On defense, I think we want to call attention to Benjamin Morrison, the freshman cornerback who has 5 interceptions this season. But we've also been told, he's on a tear. He's having a hell of a season. But he's not impervious. He can get got. And guess what? He has not faced a receiver that is as good as Jordan Addison this year. I'm pretty sure about that. Even going against the guys that Ohio State has, Jordan Addison is still on that level. So okay.
I get what you're saying, but we need to remember they also played Ohio State.
Yes, we do. It's just hard to that game was so wonky and weird.
I know.
Sort of
I get you.
Yeah. But the point is that Notre Dame has some players, but USC has players too. USC has more players. USC will be at home. USC has something to play for. And I think that we will see them play for it or we will see them lose.
Dynamite analysis? We will see them play for it or see them lose?
No, I'm just saying, like, if USC comes out knowing that they have to win this game if they want to stay alive for the playoff,
right?
Then they will win the game. If USC comes out and plays tight.
I just need that.
I know. It's not quite Mike from What's Brewing saying the team that scores more than the other one will win, which is also the case in this game.
All right, let's get to the over-under.
But this is my last analysis here. If ever there was a game for Lincoln Riley to come out and just the phrase I'm thinking of in my head is not something I think I can use on air. But if Lincoln Riley wants to go out and sort of strut his stuff a little bit, this is the game to do it. Lincoln Riley should pull out all the stops and prove that he is the best offensive coordinator in the country, because this is the real test for his offense against a good defense.
All right, we got to get to over-under. We've been on a time crunch here. For the season, Alicia has 37 wins. I have 39 over-under wins. Alicia, what is your first over-under line?
We're on 4.5 carries for Darwin Barlow. His season high for carries is 5. He had that against Colorado and Rice. He had 3 very meaningful carries against UCLA. He's earned more carries, though, right? Like, he's earned more. What he did against UCLA, get that man the ball. So will he be up there with his season high? Will we see them respond to his performance against UCLA, or will he retain his sort of 2 or 3 carries a game mantra?
This is tough. I want to say over, because I don't think 4.5 is a big threshold for him to cross. At the same point, give me the under, because looking back at the offensive performances that SC had in those games against Oregon State, well, particularly Washington State, there weren't as many plays in that game. SC ran a season high 81 plays last week against UCLA. They ran 69 against Washington State. I would expect fewer plays in this game, just because it's going to be a little bit slower and a little bit more defensive, at least. And maybe that keeps him under the 4.5.
I see. I'm fine. I'm fine with getting the over on this, to be honest.
Cool. My over-under is going to be 301.5. Caleb Williams passing yards. That seems like it shouldn't be a problem given the last few days, last few weeks for passing for Caleb Williams. Of course, he had 470 against the Bruins. A few weeks past, he had 360 against Cal, 411 against Arizona, 381 against Utah. What is 301.5 doing? Why is that line so low? Well, that's the number of yards 301 is that North Carolina quarterback and Heisman candidate Drake May threw for against Notre Dame. The season high for Notre Dame's secondary so far this year, he completed 53% of his passes. Not great, but 301 yards and 5 TDs against the Irish, the most that they've allowed this year. Can Caleb Williams surpass Drake May's performance over under 301.5 yards?
So he had 188 against Washington State and 180 against Oregon State.
Mm-hmm.
So he has been limited well below that in terms of yards, even if his impact is still strong.
284 against Fresno State.
I still like the over on this. I still like USC to go in this game knowing that they need a big performance from Caleb Williams. I like Lincoln Riley setting up this passing game to succeed in this game. I have trust in Austin Jones to run the ball the way he did against UCLA, but I still think that USC will ask Caleb Williams to go out there and sling it. So I'm going over.
Yeah, probably a good pick. The line.
I would not be surprised if this went under, to be honest. I would not. I was very tempted to take the under, so I don't think the line is bad.
All right. What's your next one?
All right, my next one is very simple. 37.5 points for USC. Notre Dame hasn't allowed more than 32 points all season. They did that against UNC and Navy. Navy? Again, another weird. This team is so weird. USC hasn't scored less than 40 points, however, in the last 5 games. They have been on a tear. So will USC not only set a new season high for what Notre Dame's defense has allowed, but will USC get up closer to 40 points in this game?
All right. The line, of course, is 35. What did you say? 37.5.
Mm-hmm.
The most Notre Dame has allowed is 32. North Carolina scored 32 points. Navy scored 32 points. I I think the 30s feels right for SC's score here, but give me the over. I'm willing to risk it for the biscuit.
I like it. I wish I had baited you into that under, because I liked the over as well. I know that Notre Dame has limited teams this year. I do not think Notre Dame has played a team rocking and rolling on offense. Notre Dame's lucky they played Ohio State in week 1.
I think it's more likely that this skews over and ends up in a shootout than it does to the under.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if this does end up being a shootout, and Mayer goes off and Pine gets in a rhythm and get Notre Dame gets theirs. But I think that even if that happens, SC is going to score more than 38. Let's go to my next one, which is over under 4.91 yards per carry for the Trojans. That is exactly what Ohio State rushed for in week 1 against Notre Dame. The Irish have been very good against the run for the most part, but a couple of bad games against Marshall and Navy. I'm willing to give the Irish a big mulligan for the Navy game. Navy, of course,
Navy's
triple
weird.
option.
Yeah.
It's weird, whatever. I'm not going to hold that one against them. But 4.91 is what Ohio State did in week 1. SC is averaging 5.34 yards per carry this season. We know the Trojans by far are the number 1 team in the country in opportunity rate, which are rushes gaining 4+ yards. SC is an elite rushing team when they want to run the football. Will they get over 4.91? Of course, they had 4.71 against UCLA last week, which was under, partially affected by sacks.
Notre Dame's defensive opportunity rate is 77th in the country. It's 48.8%. I think that Austin Jones has proven he can be relied upon.
Yeah.
I think that USC uses their running game efficiently and effectively, if not a little bit sparingly. So I'm gonna go over, very uncomfortably. Gonna go over. My instinct says to take the under here, but I'm gonna bank on Austin Jones actually in this game.
All right.
And this offensive line.
I think that one's going to be a pretty big gamble for you, but we'll see how it plays out. What's your last over under?
I've got 300.5 passing yards for Drew Pine. His season high is 289 versus North Carolina. USC is allowing 257.8 yards per game through the air, but they allowed Jack Plummer to toss 406 yards for his season high. Cam Rising had his season high against this defense. DTR didn't get there, but he was close to his season high. So quarterbacks have put up yards, passing yards on this defense. So will Drew Pine pull a Jack Plummer and set his season high, or will USC be able to limit him?
Yes, I am going to take the over here. I think Notre Dame will be able to move the ball, especially through the air. I kind of like SC to get Tuli Tuipulotu involved a lot up front. Maybe that ends up meaning more pressure on the quarterback. Maybe it ends up taking away a little bit of the run as well. But I think the passing lanes are going to be there, especially if SC continues to not have an answer for tight ends. Michael Zeke went off last week for the Bruins. We know that Dalton Kincaid went off for Utah earlier this year. I think Mayer goes off and Pine goes off, at least for yardage, for sure.
Okay, I can see it. Personally, I would like to see USC do to Drew Pine what he looked like in his opening game, where he is rattled by that pass rush.
Yeah.
And limit his yards that way.
If Tuli could eat, then that would be huge for the Trojans indeed. My last over under is 1.5 fourth down attempts for the Fighting Irish. Notre Dame is 95th in the nation on fourth down at 42.9%. They've only attempted it 14 times this season. That's 110th in the country. Ironically, tied with the Trojans. The Trojans have only attempted 14 times. However, 8 of those 14 attempts came in their losses to Marshall and Stanford, 4 each in those games. So the games in which they are pressured, they end up going forward a bit on fourth down. So 1.5 fourth down attempts for the Irish.
I actually like the over here. I think that Notre Dame is in a bit of a playing with house money situation because
Mhm.
they're not in the playoff race. They're just trying to go out there and get their signature win for the season, and set up for a stronger 2023. So yeah, I think they're going to be willing to go for it. I think we've seen USC's defense struggle to get off the field at times. So yeah, I'll take that.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a fun one to watch. See if SC ends up holding them there or what. Both these teams sort of reluctant to go for it on fourth down. Let's get the game predictions. Bill Connolly's numbers has SC winning 36-25 with a 72% win probability for the Trojans. Vegas has SC at 5.5 point favorites, 38-26. If you want to do sort of the numbers with things like over under and whatnot. Alicia, what's your prediction?
I've got USC winning this game 39-28. I don't think it'll be comfortable. I think it will be a bit of a slog, but I do think that Caleb Williams will rise to the occasion and the USC offense will rise to the occasion and put up 39 points on this solid Notre Dame defense. I think that Notre Dame will score some points, but ultimately it'll be turnovers that keeps them from getting above 30. I think that there will be turnovers in this game for the Irish. Like I said before, the only way that Notre Dame wins this game outside of USC just not being ready for the moment is if special teams becomes the storyline.
All right, I think that's a well reasoned explanation. All of that makes sense. I nearly went with an identical prediction, to be quite honest, but I'm going to change it a little bit. SC wins 41-27.
You're going up.
SC gets their yards. SC gets their points. Notre Dame gets some yards and some points too. But I kind of liken this to feeling a little bit like maybe the Stanford game at times, where there's going to be moments where Notre Dame moves the ball at ease, but SC has the firepower to sort of keep things under control. So we'll see how that goes on Saturday, 4:30 p.m. on ABC. We got one email from Tom. Hi, Alicia and Michael. The last question on the most recent episode asked if there will be a lasagna at Thanksgiving. That got me thinking. If you stuff a chicken in a duck and then put it in a turkey, you get a turducken. What happens if you stuff a smaller turkey in a bigger turkey? Is it just a turkey, or do you now have two turkeys? And is the answer any different if you stack the turkeys? Thanks, Tom in the Cayman Islands.
Tom, I love you. The family that we're staying with also loves you because this prompted an immediate debate among the household. So, yes, here is my very quick perspective. When you put a chicken in a duck and then put that in a turkey, you don't say that you have a turkey because the turkey is the thing on the outside. You say you get a turducken because you are acknowledging that there are three things that are going into that. So if you take a smaller turkey and stuff it into a bigger turkey, you have two turkeys. You have a smaller turkey and a bigger turkey. If you stack the turkeys, you still have two turkeys because a turkey is a turkey. It is its own structural thing. Just because you put it inside something or outside something does not mean that you lose the identity of that thing. Now, if you took the meat of all of those turkeys and shredded it and put it all in one big bowl, you would have turkey meat.
Yes.
But there is no plural involved in turkey meat because turkey meat is no limit on how many turkeys go into it. Just like eggs are not a question of how many eggs went into it. You have scrambled eggs that are scrambled together.
Correct. Yes. This is how you serve it. Because how do you serve it? Do you serve this in one bowl where it's all shredded together? You could have had 8 turkeys or 1 turkey. It's just turkey at that point. If you take it into 2 different birds and shred it a different way or put it on 2 different plates, then you have 2 turkeys. Like stuffing and turkey are 2 different things when they're separate. If you put them on the same bowl and you mix them together, it's then one product.
I mean, it's turkey and stuffing, but yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Kings fan says, did you see Joel Klatt calling out the CFP committee on his show? No, I haven't seen those quotes.
I saw the quotes, and I think that basically what he said is that the committee loses its credibility when it ranks someone like USC behind LSU. And so I get what he's saying, but also, like I said, the week 13, 12, and all of these rankings are always a mess. When they get to the end of the season, they always follow
Yeah.
a formula. So I think spending too much time like worrying about what the rankings look like in week 13, they're always going to look like a mess because guess what? The resumes are a mess because they're not complete yet.
Those rankings are inherently flawed because it's designed to pretend like the season is over.
Yes, which
And
means conference championships are not in play,
right.
and there's all sorts of other factors that you're going into.
Yeah. Hi, Mrs. Do you agree with Klatt that saying that Notre Dame will win on Saturday? He says their DBs are tough to throw at. I think Notre Dame will absolutely present the challenge for Caleb Williams. But like I said before, Caleb Williams is on a completely different level than he was earlier on in the season.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he can be slowed down by a very good defense, but slowing him down at this pace still is a high velocity Caleb Williams.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. He's still performing at such a high level. Let's go to Mark says, is their running game that much better than the Bruins? I don't think they are. In most games that I've watched, they seem to be trash. They've just gotten lucky and have beaten bad teams.
They don't have a running back that's nearly as good as Zach Charbonnet, and I don't think they have a running game that's as good as UCLA's is capable of being. They do have capable running backs. Like the running backs have been effective. They have been productive.
Yeah.
So it's not an issue of like they cannot run the ball. They can. The question is like if USC could stop Zach Charbonnet or limit. I don't think USC stopped Zach Charbonnet, to be quite honest. USC limited his impact.
Yes.
If they could do it to him, then they could do it to Notre Dame, especially when they have to worry a lot less about the quarterback when game planning for this offense.
Yes, that's it for me. Is that Notre Dame doesn't have necessarily a high level playmaker on offense outside of Mayer at tight end.
Yeah,
and tight end is absolutely a position that has killed SC so far this year, and you should worry about. But I don't think those skill guys are at receiver or running back. Ramo Murray says, how much will the home crowd factor into the game after wins against UCLA last week? I think it should matter. I think it absolutely should matter. If this game was at South Bend, I think we'd be talking about it completely differently. I know I play into home road splits as being something that matters. Notre Dame earlier on in the season played better away from home, but lately they've played better at home. And SC, frankly, the difficult games have been at home. It's hard to manage what the home road splits are because SC's schedule has just been easier at home.
Yeah, Notre Dame is that rare team that sort of statistically has played better on the road. But so much of that is because they were playing so horrendously at home.
Yeah.
So, like, it's not that they were playing well on the road, like playing like that they were
the
better.
Marshall and Stanford games sort of ruined that. But since then, they had the big blowout of Clemson at home. They beat Boston College at home. So they've gotten better.
They're
gotten
such
better.
a weird team.
Yeah.
It's hard to make heads or tails of them. But the fact is that USC having home field advantage is an advantage to USC.
Yeah, and I do want to see the Coliseum absolutely be raucous this week. It hasn't been all year. It needs to absolutely come unglued for sure.
Yeah.
SJ with the final question. If you stack two Notre Dame quarterbacks, will he be able to throw over Eric Gentry? Probably not.
No, I think it would be might be harder to throw over any linebacker if a quarterback was stacked on top of another quarterback. Like footwork has a lot to do with how you throw the ball. So like the whole stacked thing might be counterproductive. But having Eric Gentry potentially back that much closer to healthiness also is another factor in this game that we haven't really talked about, but it is something to think about.
Yeah, we'll see what comes of that and what comes of the game. Saturday, 4:30 p.m. on ABC. We'll be back, of course, live with a CarCast after to talk about all the happenings. We'll see if R1 in the chat got his dream scenario or if the rest of the chat got their dream scenario. We'll give you our reactions and so much more. As always, play the over-under game. Don't forget to make your picks. The link is in the description. As always, you can send us your emails at randomtroy@fanside.com, and we will see you Saturday nights with our CarCast. Until then, have a great Thanksgiving. And Alicia, you got a final word?
Yeah, my final word is thankful. I think that Thanksgiving is around. It's a time for us in our own personal lives to think about what we're thankful for. But as sports fans, I think it's important also to think about what you can be thankful for. And this is the first year in a while that I think USC fans should take a moment to reflect on what this season is, what the hopes for the future are, and be really thankful that we're not like grasping at straws to figure out like what USC fans should be thankful for, which is something I've had to do in the past when I've been writing more about this team. Be thankful for getting to go into Notre Dame week with a college football playoff on the line, with a rivalry matchup as exciting as this one, and knowing that win or lose, like the future is incredibly bright for this program. So yeah, be thankful and enjoy your turkey
Yeah,
or
and
your prime rib or your ham
we're
or
gonna have
your
both.
porque no los dos.
Not ham because ham's garbage, but
Oh,
we'll
I
talk
like
about
ham.
that in a later episode.
Yeah.
Uh, we will be back Saturday night. So until then, we will see ya. See ya.